Shalom, friends. Welcome to this Shiur. My name is Eliyahu Shear, coming to you from Chesed ve'emet in Yerushalayim. Today, we're going to be starting a series of Shiurim, which I hope to continue through a number of lessons, and I hope that you'll join me. The topic that we're speaking about is the Mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer, counting the Omer. Now, during the time period between Pesach and Shavuot, we have a mitzvah from the Torah to count 50 days, starting from the evening of the second day of Pesach until Shavuot. And on that evening, of course, we don't count because there are only 49 days to count, but that is the 50th day. And we receive the Torah, and we have this mitzvah that we need to count these days. Now, one of the reasons that we count, and it's called Sefirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, is because the word Sefira is also related to a Kabbalistic idea that in the world itself, God has set up creation in a way that there are 10 Sefirot. There are 10 what we would call vessels which contain lights of various kinds, which God uses in order to make creation happen in certain directions. When the Sefirot work in certain ways, it causes things to happen in this physical world. When we understand the workings of the spiritual Sefirot, we can understand more about the physical happenings that are going on in this world. The Sefirot are divided up into 3 sections above and 7 sections below. The 3 sections above, known as the Seichel, the areas that deal with intelligence, which include Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at, which is loosely translated as the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And then there are the 7 lower Sefirot, which are called the Midot. Now, the Midot are attributes: Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. The attributes are our emotions that fire us up or cool us down in behaving in whatever way we behave. Now, since there are 7 Sefirot, we can also combine the Sefirot with each other, and we can get a total of 49 basic Sefirot. Let me give you an example. We have a Sefira called Chesed, which is kindness, and we have a Sefira called Gevura, which is called strength, or holding oneself back, preventing oneself from doing certain things for good or for bad, whichever direction we're talking about at that point in time. But we can also do the following. We can have a Chesed Sheba Chesed, which is what's called kindness within kindness. Or, for example, we could have Gevura Sheba Chesed, which is the holding back within the kindness. Or we could have Chesed Sheba Gevura, which would be the kindness within the holding back. Or we could have the Gevura Sheba Gevura, which is the holding back within the holding back. And we're going to learn more about how this all works. The main thing to take in at this point in time is that since we have 7 Sefirot, and we can combine the Sefirot in various ways with each other, we can actually have a total of 49 pathways of how the Sefirot are going to function together. Chesed Sheba Chesed, Gevura Sheba Chesed, Tiferet Sheba Chesed, Netzach Sheba Chesed, Hod Sheba Chesed, Yesod Sheba Chesed, Malchut Sheba Chesed. Then we go through the whole process again with Gevura, and so on. Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus, we go through the whole process again. Since there are 49 days which link us from Pesach to Shavuot, the receiving of the Torah, the idea is that we need to work on ourselves according to all of these emotions to perfect ourselves. Nobody says it's an easy task. How do we know what to do? How do we improve ourselves? Can we improve ourselves? How do we perfect ourselves? Can we really do it? We all struggle. That's the challenge that we have to go through in this world. Now, what I'm going to do in this shiur, and from the shiur onwards, is to work through parts of a very beautiful book. And this book is called U'Sefartem Lachem. and you shall count for yourselves. U'Sefartem Lachem. You'll see on the screen that's being shared at the moment that is the starting words of the verse which is going to tell us about the mitzvah of counting the Omer. U'Sefartem Lachem mimacharat Shabbat, etc., etc. And we have to have a mitzvah that we have to count the weeks that lead up to, from Pesach leading up until Shavuot. This book, one of my favorites, was written by Rabbi Daniel Frisch. You can see more about him and a letter that I've translated of his on my YouTube channel, which deals with some of the introductory approach to take in studying Kabbalah. How does a person go if he wants to begin the journey of studying Kabbalah? There is a direction that one can follow as one goes through the different levels. Rabbi Daniel Frisch was an outstanding Mekubal, an authentic Kabbalist. When I say that, of course, I'm referring to the real tradition as it was passed down from teacher to student, etc., etc. I'm not talking about pop Kabbalah, where people are just claiming to be Kabbalists because they looked at what the Zohar says or they scanned it with their eyes. This is not my direction at all. I'm here to share with you the direct tradition of what we have from people who themselves received it, from people who received it from those who had the authentic tradition. And he was such an individual. And we know that he was responsible for a number of books, fantastic works. I suggest buying them all. And by the way, since we're talking about this, let me point out that I do suggest that if you're watching this video, do go ahead and buy this book. I like to tell people that when we are working in the physical world, so a person, for example, can go out and he can spend millions and he can buy himself a fancy sports car, puts the key into the ignition, off he drives, bam, into a tree, let's say, millions of dollars gone in a split second. And even if he doesn't have this particular accident, God forbid, he doesn't have to go into the tree. Nevertheless, you think about it for a second, millions of dollars into this fantastic car that drives at super speed, very comfortable to be in, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, he goes to sleep and he has his day and he has his life and so on and so forth. But the car still remains the car. He still remains the person that he is. And good for him for driving a fancy car, and fantastic. He had a great time. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, that costs millions of dollars, and nobody, not everybody in the world is able to afford such wonderful super cars. Yet, I look in my book over here, U'Sefartem Lachem, which I bought quite a number of years ago. But it's a very interesting thing. I always put the price of the book so that I remember how much I paid for it. I look in here and I see that I paid 30 shekels for this book. Inside this book, we will find secrets of life. We will find secrets of how to improve oneself as a human being, to grow, to develop, and prepare oneself ultimately as a soul for the mission for which we are in this world for. 30 shekels, not millions of dollars. So we can choose in our lives to invest our money in a simple book like this that costs 30 shekels and have growth for life, develop ourselves, progress. Or we can invest millions in a car, of course, and we're still we, and the car is still the car. And at the end of the day, we are separate entities, and it's fine to be in a comfortable car, and it's fast, and it's fantastic. It gives one a lot of honor and respect from other people, perhaps. Who knows what? But for 30 shekels, one can gain life itself. So, of course, I highly advise and I highly recommend all of the books of Rabbi Daniel Frisch. He was an outstanding tzaddik, died in 2006. He was 70 years old, and it's fascinating to note that, in fact, he died at exactly 70 years old. But they point out that he didn't die on his 70th birthday. He died 8 days later, corresponding, in other words, to the day of his bris. He had 70 full years from the day of his bris. Wow, that's fantastic. He was a real tzaddik. Now, amongst the books that he wrote, which were all, of course, Kabbalistic in nature or very moral in nature, holy in nature, kadosh. Well, in addition to this, he did an entire commentary on the Zohar, which is, of course, called the Matok Midvash, sweeter than honey. A very beautiful commentary on the Zohar. Anybody who wants to pursue these studies of learning the Zohar, I strongly suggest that he look into purchasing a set. And as I look at my own set that I have, and I look at the price of it today, I notice that I think it is not more than 50 shekels more than I paid for my set many, many years ago. In fact, this organization, they're not looking for profit. They're looking to distribute Torah, Kedusha, holiness to people. And that is why, if you go onto their site today, and again, I'm certainly not being paid by the organization to advertise their services or their books or anything like that. I do it free of charge. I'm just grateful that I do have permission from them that I can use their books when I teach. And I'm very grateful for that. And I'm certainly prepared to offer their site on my channel so that people can go to it. It's www.matokmidvash.com. I'll put it on the video so that anybody wants to see more about it or purchase his books, please go ahead and do so. So we're working from this book, U'Sefartem Lachem, and you shall count for yourselves. And what Rabbi Daniel Frisch has done for us is based upon a particular book that was written and published only once. The book was published only once, and it's never been available since then. But you can get it on Hebrew books if you want to. I can tell you more about it later. But it's not important. The important thing to know is that he based this book upon that book. And what he's going to do for us is he's going to direct us in this work of how to work on ourselves during the 49 days that go between Pesach and Shavuot, the 50 days, 49 days of counting, 50 days in total. And he's going to tell us how to work upon ourselves based upon the secrets of the Sefirot. We're going to learn what's Chesed, what's Gevura, what's Tiferet. How do I work on myself correctly? How do I develop myself as a human being? This is a work that needs to be read and studied every single year because the same ideas come up. And as we're going to see, as I'm going to read, I'm going to be reading from the book, working from the book, as well as some text online that I'm going to share with you. Please follow along. We're going to be quoting from a variety of sources in the Torah, including some wonderful sources from the Zohar, so that I hope that you will stay with me throughout this lesson and future lessons so that we will gain together from all of these teachings that we're going to have. So in the book U'Sefartem Lachem, you will see printed at the beginning of the book, and that's why I suggest obtaining this book. It's only 30 shekels, or maybe it's 35 or 40 now, I'm not sure. Check it out on the website. But what we'll gain is that there are a number of tables over here that you can see. So it's not so clear on the video, but you can see more or less where he writes the days of the Omer, and he tells us exactly what kavanot to have. What are the intentions that one should have while one is counting? And again, let me point out clearly that the role of a Jew in this world, quite frankly, the role of anybody in this world, is to be engaged in action. We are not here to simply meditate our lives away. Oh, meditation is a great thing. It's a wonderful thing to be close to God and to feel and whatever you want to do. Close your eyes and drift off into inner space. And there's a time for that. And there's a time for meditation of just speaking to Hashem, as Rabbi Nachman of Breslov teaches us, and so on and so forth. But more important is to engage in the action that develops ourselves and makes an interaction with others so that we can heal the world as best as we can, of course, to whatever degree we're able to. Nobody is perfect, but we all have the duty of trying to perfect ourselves as much as possible. Now, what we're going to do is when we read the day of Sefirat HaOmer, today is the first day, today is the second day, the seventh day, it's a week, etc., etc. As we go through it, if you follow this table, which appears at the beginning of the book, and so therefore go and purchase the book so you can see this because it's fantastic, you don't see it in every Siddur exactly, he gives you all the different kavanot to have in mind. That includes, in other words, of course, I must work on myself, but in addition, I should also contemplate what that particular day is. How does it relate to me in my mind? Because, of course, if I can't think straight, I will not be able to do straight. So the first thing to do is to concentrate on what it is that I need to do, get a focus. How do I heal the world spiritually in my mind? And thereafter, I take those thoughts and I put it into speech. And from speech, I put it into action. And there I go and I make a difference in the world, whether it's to myself, whether it's to Hashem, whether it's to other people. There are many relationships that go on in our lives. We are not independent beings only to ourselves, and we are not beings that have to deal only with other people. We are beings that interact with ourselves to ourselves, from ourselves to other people, and also from ourselves to Hashem, and then back again. Hashem towards ourselves, ourselves towards ourselves, back in the opposite direction, if we can imagine what that means. In other words, thinking about the value of spirituality, bringing it to myself, as opposed to thinking about myself and trying to bring it to spirituality. And then afterwards, the relationships I have with other people, that goes from them to me. So it's from me to them, and then from them to me also. So in this book, there are these tables, and then there are the various prayers that are said. And then afterwards, there is a wonderful picture of a menorah here, which contains Tehillim 67. It's a famous picture. If you're in shul, you'll probably know that they probably have this on a beautiful sheet, and either somebody, a sofer, wrote it himself, or alternatively, it's a picture that you purchase, and it's got all the kavanot that one has, and one reads the psalm in the direction of the menorah, which is said to have certain healing properties, mystical properties, and that's what the reason is for this menorah. So, of course, on every day that we are involved in Sefirat HaOmer, we also scan the Tehillim, and we think about all these things. It's a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic effort that we involve ourselves in, to be aware, cognizant of all the things that are going on during this period between Pesach and Shavuot. And why are we doing it? When I was young, I recall going to shul, and I remember that there was the choir that would sing. On Shabbat, the choir would sing and make the service beautiful with their voices. And one of the things that used to bother me a lot is that when it would come to Sefirat HaOmer, I never understood what this was about when I was a young child, 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, when I'd gone to shul. And I remember in those days, there's the choir singing. And then I remember the service was delayed for, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It was between Pesach and Shavuot, and they were singing the particular section that deals with Sefirat HaOmer. Now, you don't have to do that. What counts more than that whole song that they would go on about, singing backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, the word was repeated 10 times. It was sung with a high sound and a low sound and all different things like that. And it bothered me a lot. And as I grew up, as the years have passed by, I realized that what counts is not all the singing that went on, making out as if it was such a holy thing, but what really counts is counting the Omer, the mitzvah that needs to be done, then internalizing what needs to be done in terms of the actions from the speech, and then moving on afterwards. The singing, that's just a bonus. Sometimes it delays the service too much. People need to get home and eat, have a good time. It's Shabbat. We don't have to be in shul all the time just to listen to a song that repeats itself again and again. So that bothered me, and today, of course, I don't daven in such a minyan, and I don't have to worry about this length of time that is spent. Okay, so these are the different parts of the book, and then at the end of the book, he goes into a bit of detail, and he gives a commentary on the Tehillim that we recite, number 67, which is the Menorah Tehillim, and one or two other things, the song of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he explains, etc., etc. There are a number of things that are added to this wonderful book. So do go and purchase it yourself. And perhaps if we have the opportunity now, we're going to go through a few shiurim, you'll be able to follow along with me. And if not, in any case, you get the book for yourself, go through it yourself, and start to learn what these beautiful ideas are all about. I'm just going to read now from the beginning of the book. I'm going to read some ideas, and I'm going to share further ideas on the screen so that you can follow what's going on. We're going to learn more about the mitzvah itself because, as I told you before, the idea is not just to immerse ourselves in the kavanot, intentions. I must intend this and I must intend that. Fine. Intend whatever you want. But when there's a poor person standing in front of you and you have these holy intentions, you take God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and you take Aleph and Dalet and Nun and Yud, you put them together and you begin to have these holy thoughts. And the fellow is standing in front of you and says, please, I need a place to sleep tonight. I need a coin to buy myself some food for lunch. I need to get some garments. I need a place, a roof over my head. I need some transport that I can travel to work so that I can earn income. Something, help me. But we are holier. So what we do is we have lots of kavanot. And we walk away very proud. We had all these kavanot. Well, that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, the poor fellow has no money. Our duty is to engage in the mitzvah itself. The kavanah is a bonus. When we have perfected and we understand what the mitzvah is, it's tefillin, it's Shabbat, that I observe it. fully. I study the Shulchan Aruch. I study the Mishnah Brura. I study the Sheilot and Shavuot from all the rabbis, modern rabbis, previous rabbis of previous generations. When I begin to do this, then when I've perfected myself already in my observance, that doesn't mean to say I'm perfect, but it means to say that I work on myself all the time to do better, to do more. Pesach, matzah. Well, which matzah am I having? Am I just having chocolate matzah? Or am I serious? I'm having shmura matzah. I'm having handmade matzah. How much will I fulfill of this mitzvah? When it comes to Pesach evening, will I eat just a small piece of the matzah and say, I have fulfilled my obligation and now I can have kavanot? Or will I say I will eat the correct amount? The kavanah comes afterwards. It's additional. It's added. It gives it fuel. It causes the mitzvah to soar high. But if we don't do the mitzvah is not done. If we don't give the poor man money, he will not be able to eat. Doesn't matter how great our kavanot are. So focus on the kavanot. Fantastic. But make sure to do the mitzvah. And therefore, in our shiur, we're going to discuss a little bit about the mitzvah as well. Hopefully, in this shiur, we'll do a little bit about the mitzvah, just to get an idea of what the mitzvah of counting the Omer is. Because first and foremost, I fulfill the mitzvah of counting. Thereafter, I focus on what the kavanah is, and I think about how I can implement it, and to grow from it, and to become better from it. So he brings in the beginning of the book. It's called Kitzur HaMavor. It's a brief introduction to his book, and he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just one moment. Fine. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tzivanu b'toraso. HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us in his Torah HaKadosha, in his holy Torah, lispor Sefirat HaOmer, that we have a mitzvah to count the days of the Omer, kedei laharot b'nafshenu, in order to show our souls, to show us, es hacheshek hagadol lematan Torah, to show us our great desire for the giving of the Torah. The reason that we're counting these days is because we want to show how much we feel a connection to the special day of receiving the Torah. Of course, if you're watching this video and you've watched other videos on Torah study, then everybody knows that the crux of everything about being Jewish is in studying the Torah. We cannot do anything, we cannot speak anything, we cannot think anything if it is not in the direction of the Torah. That's where everything comes from. Oh, so we have Sukkot, and everybody goes into the Sukkah. We have Pesach, and we eat matzah because we came out of Eretz Mitzrayim. And we put on tefillin as a reminder we came out of Eretz Mitzrayim. We wear tzitzit, and so on and so forth. We eat kosher. Very good. But all of this is secondary in comparison to the most important idea, which is the receiving of the Torah. We receive the Torah at Matan Torah on Shavuot, and therefore we have a desire to get there. As we will learn later exactly what that means. Of course, anybody can already start thinking of the idea of what we're talking about when a person's anticipating something. He's excited, something's about to happen, he gets very excited, and he wants to get there as soon as he can. And every day, of course, is a day of excitement as it leads closer and closer to the final day, when he gets finally what he's been looking forward to. And the whole idea is to prepare ourselves during this time in a way of purity. Omer rabu ma'alasam lema'ala rosh. These days of the Omer are very, very great days. Ki yesh b'chol yom koach shel shmona yamim mehashana. Because there is in every single one of the days of Sefirat HaOmer the power of 8 days of the year. What we can achieve on each day of Sefirat HaOmer is the equivalent of what we can achieve of 8 days during the year. Imagine, for example, I would tell you, you can gain a salary, whatever you're going to get paid on that particular day, the equivalent of what you generally would get for 8 days over a period of 49 days or 50 days. So for 50 days, you can get on every single day of those days the equivalent of 8 days worth of salary that you would generally get during the year. Who would be the fool who would refuse such an offer? What a generous offer. I will attain in one day what I can attain generally in 8 days. Therefore, I'm going to take hold of these days and get the most that I can out of them. V'kimei Chol HaMoed hen chashuvim, and they are considered like Chol HaMoed, meaning the days, the intermediary days that are between a particular festival, like Pesach. We start off with Pesach day number 1, and there are 7 days in Pesach or 8 days in Pesach in Chutz La'aretz, and the intermediary days that go between day number 1 and day number 7 or 8, in other words, 7 and 8, of course, for Chutz La'aretz, but still, it's day number 1 or day number 2, whatever you say, 1 and 2 for Chutz La'aretz and 7 and 8 for Chutz La'aretz, or 1 and 7 for Eretz Yisrael. The days in between the Yom Tov are called Chol HaMoed. Chol HaMoed means Chol, profane, HaMoed, of the festival. Well, what do we mean? Well, today, for example, today is Tuesday. Is it Chol? Is it Kadosh? Is it Moed? It's easy to identify. It is Chol. When it is Shabbat, it is Kadosh. Meaning, Shabbat is holy. The general day is profane, secular. On a general day, I can do whatever I want. Meaning, as long as it's within the general structure of Torah, of what I can do in terms of mitzvot, etc. I mustn't do any aveirot, etc., etc. But I can do whatever I want. I can drive my car, I can switch the lights on and off, etc., etc. I can do cooking, etc. No problem. On Shabbat, of course, I can't do these things because it is a melacha that I may not do these particular things. On Yom Tov, I also may not do these things, with the exception of, for example, cooking and carrying. Even if there's no eruv, I can carry. And we have to learn more about the halachot, how to cook. Please don't go and switch on your stove because I said you can cook. You put the stove on and start cooking yourself a steak. No, that's not what we mean. But we have to learn the halachot. Fine. These days of Sefirat HaOmer are considered to be like Chol HaMoed. Chol, secular, Moed, festival. Therefore, the days between the first day of Pesach and the last day of Pesach, between the first day of Sukkot and the last day of Sukkot, are called Chol HaMoed. It is the secular part of the festival, meaning the halachot that apply to the festival do not apply to Chol HaMoed because it's not the festival. On the other hand, what applies generally to Chol does not apply to Chol HaMoed either because it's called Chol HaMoed. There is both an aspect of Chol, profanity, profane, and there's an aspect of Moed, festival. In fact, what we call it is the profane part of the festival, which means that during Chol HaMoed, I have a duty to involve myself in the festival itself, only that some things are permitted which wouldn't generally be permitted on the Moed itself, on the festival itself. And that's why it's called Chol HaMoed. Therefore, I must examine, may I drive a car on Chol HaMoed? Yes. Why? Because it's Chol HaMoed. I mean, it's profane part of the festival, so I can drive the car. Well, what about, for example, writing a letter? I want to write a letter with a pen and I write a letter. This is something that is asur. Why? Because it's Chol HaMoed. Because still, we need to know that even though it's profane, it's still part of the festival. I need to involve myself in the holiness of the festival, and only certain things, according to halacha, which we need to learn, will be permitted on Chol HaMoed. But in general, we devote ourselves to the festive day and the festive occasion that it is. So on Pesach, for example, we have these festive days in between the first day and the last day. We engage in the festival of Pesach, and we have some bonuses that we're allowed to do certain things that we can't generally do on Yom Tov. But the day is associated not with secular activities, but with the holiness of the festival. Studying more Torah, eating better meals. If you are in control to have a small amount of wine just for the simcha of the festival. Again, I'm clarifying myself, a small amount of wine just for the honor of the festival, maybe a meat meal. And if it's not meat or you don't eat meat, have something that you enjoy because it's a festive occasion. It is Chol HaMoed, profane, but it is still a festival. Now, these days of the 49 days that we're speaking about between Pesach and Shavuot are considered like those intermediary days of Pesach or Sukkot. That's what he says. Therefore, v'hagodol mikol, and the biggest thing about it is Kihem shorish lechol yemot hashana. These days between Pesach and Shavuot are in fact the roots for all the days of the year. And in the direction that a person goes, during these days, that is how he will go the rest of the year. What does that mean? It means the way in which a person accustoms himself during these days is a sign for the way he will accustom himself in the year to come. His behavior, his working on himself during this period of time is a correspondence. It corresponds to the same behavior that we are going to have during the year. He says that a person can ultimately, totally destroy from himself the Yetzer Hara, that if he does it correctly during these days, these 49 days, he can destroy the Yetzer Hara for the rest of the year. If a person understands how to do it, he can destroy the Yetzer Hara in Sefirat HaOmer for the rest of the year, because these days correspond to the rest of the year. What we do now, meaning during the Sefirat HaOmer, is a representation of how we are going to get through the rest of the year. Happy is the person who goes in these days in a way of holiness. He brings down a very interesting idea. He says that in this way, when he does things correctly, he will not be required to face judgment on Rosh Hashanah. Wow, we're going to learn more about it later. Meaning, a person who works on himself correctly, that he does the teshuvah now, already between Pesach and Shavuot, he works on himself, he changes himself as a person, he becomes greater, he refines himself more during this period of time. He has the ability now, because already he does the teshuvah, to prepare himself that the Rosh Hashanah is like negligible in comparison to the effort that he's putting in at this point in time. We will learn more about it. Do not go and quote me to everybody and just say, oh, if this particular fellow on YouTube, he says, if you do things right in this, he doesn't, don't worry about Rosh Hashanah, you can do what you want. This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, as we're going to learn later, is that the power inside these days is an equivalent, so to speak, to knock off the dangers of the judgment day of Rosh Hashanah. We prepare ourselves already at this point in time. Being Jewish is a full-time growth process. We move from one festive day or event to the next. Once a week, we have Shabbat. In the month of Tishrei, we have numerous Chagim. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah. We move to Cheshvan, which has nothing. But then we get to Kislev, we've got Chanukah. In Tevet, it's not such a happy month, but we start to think about the destruction of the temple. In Shvat, it's the time of the new trees, to be Shvat. Adar comes to Purim. Look at the cycle of the Jewish year as it goes around. We're active all the time. We move into Pesach. We move into Sefirat HaOmer. We move into Sukkot. There's a constant movement that's happening. To be Jewish means to be in a constant state of growth, like a child. Who would think that if one saw a child at a certain stage, the child is crawling around. It's 3 months old, starts to crawl around. Anyway, we see the child at 2 years old, and the child is still crawling like he was 3 months old. Life carries on. We see at the age of 4 years old, he's still crawling like he was when he was 2, when he was 3 months. And then we notice something even more interesting. By the time he's 6, he's still crawling in the same way. Who would think such a thought? If we saw such a child like that, we'd take him to the doctor. We'd worry about him. Why is he not walking correctly? Or why is he not talking correctly? His mental capabilities, his physical capabilities, everything has to grow constantly on a day-to-day basis. We need to see the growth every single day. So too for a Jew. The cycle that we have brings him to growth every single year, to grow further and further and further. He grows greater and greater and greater as the years draw on. A person can never be satisfied with how he is at a particular age because he learned a particular thing and he thinks it's good enough. The learning process of being Jewish is a constant process, constant growth. Therefore, I continue to work on myself this Sukkot like I never did before on the previous Sukkot. And the next Sukkot, I should be working on myself even more. That is the process of growth. Sefirat HaOmer comes around once a year again. to teach us the importance of constant growth. Where I was last year should not be even comparable to where I am this year. The growth that I had of chesed shebechesed, gevurah shebechesed, tiferet shebechesed, and so on last year should have little bearing on where I'm going to be this year on chesed shebechesed, gevurah shebechesed, tiferet shebechesed. Have I improved? Have I grown? Life is a constant growing process. I cannot be the same person that I was last year, even with that same mitzvah. I have to have grown somehow. Even if I give charity, I have to say, I know that last year I gave charity, and this year I also give charity. But nevertheless, is the charity that I give this year better than the charity I gave last year? And I don't just mean the amount, God forbid. I mean the way I give the charity. Was I able to give that charity without worrying as much as I worried the last year? Do I feel more compassion for the person who I'm giving to? Do I feel I should give more even if I can't? How have I grown this year from the previous year? I'm like that child. But you see, when the child grows, we see the growth. So when he's 1 year old, he's so tall. When he's 2 years old, his height is a little bit more. 3 years old, well, now we see he's 6 years old. Now he's growing, fantastic. When he gets to 18 or 21, whatever the final age is for the final stages of when the growth has reached its final level, people don't worry so much anymore if he's not growing. On the contrary, if he carries on growing, we start getting worried because now he's growing too tall, meaning that he might have a problem that needs to be stopped so that he shouldn't become too tall, which could also become a dangerous thing. Fine. So the idea, of course, is when we see people working as they grow in life, we tend to see them reach a certain point and then we're satisfied with their growth. But in Torah, in spirituality, there can be no such thing. We need to compare ourselves constantly to the child who is still growing and constantly growing. So every day has to be a day of growth. I should see it. You know, sometimes when we encounter family children, the children of family members, and we see them once every so often, let's say we see them once every 3 months or 4 months, and we see that the family member had a child, and now the child is 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old. So we see the child at 3. Anyway, we have a family meeting 3 months later, 4 months later. We look at the child, we say, wow, you've grown. We see it. It's exciting. The growth is exciting. So too when it comes to spirituality, how did it happen? Did it happen immediately? The child, when they were 3, they were this height. And now that we see them at 3 and 3 months, it's like in a split second, they change their heart. No, that's not true. They change their heart every single day, miraculously. God pushes hormones. He gets working the hormones in the person's body, and the person continues to grow. And then when we see them 3 months later, we see, hey, you've changed. Of course, the person himself, he doesn't notice it. Even, you know, when we look at ourselves, if you take a look at yourself in the mirror and you see yourself when you're 20 years old, and you look 21 years old, 22 years old, very often you don't really notice any changes because sometimes you're looking in the mirror too often. So you keep seeing yourself as if you were the same person the previous day. But then you look at yourself in the mirror like, you know, when you get to 50 years old or 60 years old, and then you look back at a picture of yourself when you were 20 and you say, wow, I've changed. How did it happen? It was every single day there was a change in the body's growth. In the beginning, the body grew in a certain way physically, meaning he got taller, she got taller. And the mind expanded in a certain way that when they were 3 years old, they couldn't really conceive much. They could say the alphabet a little bit. But by the time they were 4 years old, they were reading nicely already. By the time they were 5 or 6, they could write tests and they could remember all the information in the books. And so the mind starts to grow and grow and grow. And then sometimes it reaches a point and we figure that that's where we are. But that's not true. We have to constantly see ourselves as that baby and we're growing. And that's what the Sefirat HaOmer is. We're constantly growing, and the work that we do on the Sefirot, as we're going to learn about together, is the effort of seeing ourselves and working on ourselves to be different this year than we were last year. Chesed shebechesed this year is the same chesed shebechesed of last year, but it's not. Because I need to internalize what it is to me this year that didn't work out for me when it was last year. How have I grown? I need to grow. And as we're going to learn, I'm going to say it, I'm going to read it over here. We're going to see shortly that everything that we learn here is something that needs to be internalized every day of our lives. And it's not just a Sefirat HaOmer thing. We're just learning it for Sefirat HaOmer in order to progress. But the reality is this is something that takes us through the entire year, every single day of our lives, until we leave this world. Amnam, kodem shekabel adam matana zo. Before a person receives this gift, meaning the gift that the Rosh Hashanah, meaning he worked on himself so well that the Rosh Hashanah is secondary in comparison to the effort that he puts in at this point in time. To receive this gift, a person has to go through a test in this world. In these days, sorry, he needs to go through a test in these days. What is that? The test is to work on these particular midot. Chesed shebechesed, gevura shebechesed. We need to work on it. Every day that goes by, how did I improve myself? And he has the ability that he can do it. As he can fix up his attributes, his emotions, his growth, as is fitting. He mentions that when it comes to perfecting ourselves, it's not an easy matter. Many people see religious people and they become very angry at these religious people. People, especially who are secular, become very angry at certain religious people. They say, you see that fellow over there? He wears a kippah. Well, he wears a black kippah. You see that fellow over there? He wears his tzitzit hanging out. You see that fellow over there? He says he keeps Shabbat. Holy of holies, he thinks he is. And look how he behaves here, and look how he behaves there. They get very angry. As if to say, of course, that they themselves are perfect, because nobody would criticize anybody like that unless they themselves were perfect. Not realizing, of course, that perhaps there's something wrong with themselves also that needs tikkun. But the fellow who's wearing the kippah, and he wears it, sits it out, and he puts 2 pairs of tefillin on, keeps Shabbat, keeps kosher. It doesn't mean simply because he does these mitzvot that he's perfect. It means he is striving towards the perfection as he grows and develops and becomes what he'd really like to become. He wants to become that great person. That's why he's on the journey. Sometimes the other person has no interest. So they think they're already there. Because when one is not on the journey, one thinks one has already reached his destination. But when one gets onto the journey, one realizes the destination is far ahead. There's much road still to travel. So therefore, the idea is to realize that during this period of time, we all have to work on our attributes. Black kippah, kippah sruga, whatever it is, no kippah. Everybody has to work on the attributes no matter where they are. That is a life event, a life challenge. That is life itself. V'hinei, tikon hamidus ala seder eno kal, amnam b'yamim elu yasik ha'adam siyata dishmaya rabba. Now, even though it is that preparing these midas, these attributes, according to this order is not an easy matter, as we just said, nevertheless, during these days, a person is able to acquire much more during this period because he gets what's called in Aramaic siyata dishmaya. Help from heaven, siyata dishmaya. Every festival brings with it energy. Shabbat brings with it energy. Days bring with them energy according to what that particular day is. When it comes to Sefirat HaOmer, the energy that's coming down to us is an energy that says, take me now in order to improve yourself, because the energy is there for you now. It is what's called an 8 Ratzon. It is a time of divine favor. The energy is in the air waiting for you to grab it. I'll give you an example. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah, we have to eat an apple in honey. The beginning of the meal, we have an apple in honey for a sweet new year. There's an amazing thing. In Israel, you'll probably find this in general. I'm not marketing anybody in particular, but I'm just making a general statement. You'll find that the honey that's being sold just before Rosh Hashanah will probably be on special. Why? Because Rosh Hashanah needs the honey. We need the honey on Rosh Hashanah. And so the stores know that everybody's going to buy the honey. And so therefore, when the honey goes onto the shelves, the managers, the store owners, put the honey slightly cheaper. First of all, because they know it's going to sell out. They know people are going to buy it at that point in time. And also because they want to help their clients to enjoy the benefits of what they need at that point in time, so they give it at a lesser rate. As soon as Rosh Hashanah is finished, boom, the price of honey goes back to normal again. Grab the honey when you can. Meaning, if you can't afford honey, generally speaking, make sure you buy the honey then before Rosh Hashanah. Buy yourself an extra bottle. And another one, and another one. As long as it keeps fresh, buy it, because you've got a special going on. It's an 8 Ratzon for the honey. During the time of Sefirat HaOmer, it's an 8 Ratzon for the time of working on oneself. What we can achieve during Sefirat HaOmer is something we cannot achieve throughout the year. And what we achieve then throughout this period is something that will take us through the entire year. Let's continue. V'hinei, tikun amidus ala seder, we said that. Ki shorshe hanhagos habeirei hanikreim Sefiros mitgalim b'yamim ha'elu. He says that the roots of the whole conduct, the system of the Creator, is called Sefirot. The way that Hashem designs everything is that the system of the Sefirot reveals themselves during these days. Chesed becomes revealed much more. Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut, everything becomes revealed. Grab it now. It's like you can see it. It's like you can feel it. You can attach yourself to it. Now is the time to do it. V'ofen hatikun hanidrashu. And the way to repair it is as follows. Kasher yitbonein ha'adam, when a person contemplates, ki lechol mida v'teva shebo, in every single attribute and its nature, yesh achiza b'shorish ram v'gavua, you should know that it has a holding in its root, which is very high up above, sheb'sefirot ha'elyonot, as the Sefirot manifest themselves in the higher worlds. This is not a time for a Kabbalistic Shear, but the short of it is that in the spiritual worlds, there are 4 different main spiritual worlds. Atzilot is the highest. Bria is the next, lower down. The next is then Yetzirah, and the final world is Asiyah. And we live in the physical dimension of the world of Asiyah. There is a spiritual dimension to Asiyah also. We don't want to speak about it at this point in time because it has certain dangerous things that are attached to it. So we're not speaking about the spiritual. Let's go up. In the world of Yetzirah is the world of the angels. In the world of Bria is the world of the throne, God's throne, whatever that means. Please do not think of these as physical concepts at all. These are not physical concepts. Angels do not have physical wings like we imagine. And the throne is not a chair with 4 legs, and you can imagine that there are things sitting around it, and God is sitting on this throne and whatnot. This is not what we're talking about. And in the world of Atzilot are the Sefirot. All of existence and things that are happening here is happening because of the functioning of the Sefirot in that world of Atzilot, which is then drawn down into this world of Asiyah and plays out in a physical manifestation. So everything that we're talking about now is as it pertains over there and as we draw it down over here. And the connection to this root, which is called the Sephira, according to its nature, or Midotav, and according to its attributes, Shel Adam, of a person, Nitzba'arim, B'Zohar HaKadosh B'Alfei Arachim. The Zohar HaKadosh, the Holy Zohar, written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the great Tana and student of Rabbi Akiva. Everybody knows who Rabbi Akiva was. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was, in fact, Rabbi Akiva's student. And the teachings that he gives us is really ultimately the teachings from his own teacher, Rabbi Akiva. That's how the story goes. And a person who studies the Zohar will find constantly these measurements of the Sefirot being dealt with. Whether it says the name of the Sephira or not doesn't make any difference. If you follow the discussion of the Zohar, you'll understand, if you understand what's going on. If you get the Matok Midvash, for example, as an edition in your library, you'll be able to understand because the Hebrew is quite easy. As long as you understand Hebrew, you'll be able to follow along in the direction. And Rabbi Daniel Frisch comes to explain to us the language of the Zohar. So you will find in numerous places, that's what it's all about, is the value system, how the Sefirot are functioning. And therefore, we come with this book that he's written here. We're going to use lots of examples. We're going to explain the nature of people and how they custom themselves. What do? How do they do certain things? How do people react? It's almost like a work on psychology. How they are held in their roots, Sefirot HaKadoshot, that are in the holy Sefirot, as it's explained in the Zohar HaKadosh and all the commentaries. Everything that we're going to learn about is based upon specific details. Everything is upon foundations and sources which are trustworthy. We are not going to be speaking about works that are written by modern writers who have written some pop Kabbalistic book or whatever the case is. It's not what we're going to quote from. We're going to quote from the heavyweights. We're going to quote from those books written by great tzaddikim so that we can understand exactly how the Sefirot function. And we're going to go along the footsteps of the great first rabbis, which means from, the Rishonim, the great rabbis from 1,000 years ago and so on, who are like angels. As it's explained, we're going to learn about it in the introduction, and everything that we're going to learn about in the introduction has 10 chapters to it. We'll see how we can see how far we get with this. This Shear has gone on a little bit longer than I expected. I wanted to get into the work itself, but instead I've given more of an introduction. Now, let's just read the final note that he puts here, and he says, Klal Gadol Hu. It is a great rule. Ki kol siman v'kol seif. Every chapter and every paragraph. Shayach la'avod bo es haboire yisparach b'chol zman uv'chol eis uv'chol eiver. Everything that we're going to learn about is relevant to a person, that he should engage in it in order to serve Hashem every moment, every time, and with every limb of his body. So whatever we're going to learn about here is relevant at any point in time that we speak about. It's not just related to the Sefirat HaOmer days between Pesach and Shavuot. What we'll learn about here are keys to guide us through the whole of life, every single day of our lives. We will integrate it on the days of Sefirat HaOmer. And then we will take it with us as a message for all the days of the year. You can read this book every single day of your life. You can keep going through it again and again and again to absorb and understand what the particular midot are and see how you can implement it. No matter what day you are, take any of it, any of these midot that we're mentioning here, implement it any day that you want to. Of course, it's specific for Sefirat HaOmer, but nevertheless, you can use that also during the year. And that we have already pointed out and related to the particular thing of the service that's required on that particular day, or la'ever hazeh, or to this particular limb, uzman hazeh, bedavka, or this particular time specifically. Hakol hu bepratot. Everything is just defined in a particular way. That means to say on that particular day, a person should put in extra effort in dealing with that particular thing. But not that that thing is only related to that particular day, God forbid. Rather, we can use that thing on every single day of our lives, but we want to focus on it. We need to focus. Focus on what we're doing today. Because if I think about where I'll be in 3 years' time or 5 years' time, I might be so carried away with the thoughts of where I am there that I forget about what I need to do today. So first and foremost, I need to concentrate, what must I do today? And once I've absorbed that and internalized it, I can take that into the future and I can use it throughout the year. Aval ka'amur, ein bazeh inyan limnoa es ha'ovet Hashem milahashlim es atzmo biprat hazeh. Nevertheless, as we said, there's no reason that a person should hold himself back from serving Hashem, from completing himself in this particular thing, meaning continuing throughout the year, gam bisman acher, also in another time, or be'ever acher, or to use another limb. Even though he might say, for example, that you use this particular limb to do this particular thing, nevertheless, it doesn't mean only on that particular day. It means any time, and you can change the limb as well, depending on the circumstances. We will see, we'll get a feeling for it, we'll understand how it works. There's a great book called the Sefer Haredim, written by Rabbi Shlomo Azkari. He was a great Kabbalist at the time of the Arizal. And in this work, part of the work deals with chapters that show the connection between mitzvot and the limbs of the body. And he brings down over there the idea that when there's a sickness in a particular limb of the body, it's a sign that the mitzvah that needs to be done with that particular limb of the body has not been done adequately. And therefore, if a person wants to heal the limb, and again, I'm not giving medical advice over here, I'm just simply expressing how the book is related and narrated, and so that we can use this in any case as guidelines for ourselves. In any case, we can use it irrespective. But he says that there's something missing in the limb, and when we do the mitzvah, we give strength to that particular limb in that particular area, because that's what the mitzvah is that's related to that particular limb. We will learn in this book also that when it comes to the Midot, Chesed, for example, Chesed is the right arm, Gevurah is the left arm, Sefirat is the body, etc., etc. We're going to learn how to include this within our mitzvah observance. For example, if I speak about the action of Chesed and I say it's the right arm, what I also mean is that when I give charity, when I give tzedakah, I use my right arm and my hand to give the tzedakah. Why? Because since Chesed is the right arm, I wish to fulfill the mitzvah with the Chesed attributes. I use the right arm to fulfill the mitzvah of the charity, which is on the side of the Chesed, which is the right arm. So we need to understand how all the limbs of the body work with all the mitzvahs, and I'm just integrating this with the Sefer Haredim because the same idea applies. What we need to do is to work on that particular limb, on that particular mitzvah. Okay, so already the Shear has gone on for long enough for today. We're not going to continue now. But B'ezrat Hashem, I would like to continue the Shear. Certainly would enjoy your feedback. If you watch this and you got through to the entire Shear, please do let me know what your feedback is and how you've enjoyed the Shear, because that will help me to know how to progress in the future. Of course, if the Shear takes on and people are enjoying it, it will give me the encouragement to want to share even more and more of this, so that we can work through this together and perhaps even complete all the different days of the Self-Refinement HaOmer and be well prepared as we go from Pesach to Shavuot. Thank you for joining me for this Shear. I'm Eliyahu Shear. My website is www.lovingkindness.co. And if you have enjoyed this Shear, please do subscribe to my channel, share it with friends and family, invite them to subscribe as well. Please do like the Shear by clicking on the like button, just the thumbs up button, to say that you've appreciated the Shear. And please feel free to make a positive comment so that I can hear your thoughts or offer a question or whatever it is. And I'd be delighted to be in touch with you. Of course, if you send me an email directly on my website, you can use the form over there and send me. I'd also be delighted to be in touch with you. Don't forget, if you'd like to learn one-on-one with me, please feel free to contact me via the website, and we can learn any book of your choice together. We can grow together just like we're growing in this Shear. I also offer online spiritual coaching and counseling for people who would like to grow in other areas and would like to discuss their lifestyle and how they can improve and how they can reach certain goals. I'm also involved in that, so please do contact me if I can offer you assistance in that direction. I look forward to another Shear in the near future, and I wish you everything of the best. Take care. Shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.